YouTube, with the Boston Celtics being the top of the conference and winning the NBA Finals in 2024, and then you have other teams in the East, right? Like the Sixers and the Knicks, who made dramatic moves this offseason to build their roster a little bit better. A lot of attention has been given to these three teams in particular to be at the top of the conference next season, and I gotta be honest with you folks, I'm struggling to find reasons why the Milwaukee Bucks won't be just as good, if not better, than a lot of those teams towards the top of the East next season. This team is not getting any coverage. This team is not getting any recognition, and in this video I'm going to explain why I actually think the Bucks are maybe the most slept on team in the Eastern Conference. We have a few that we've already covered, like the Orlando Magic, but in my opinion, the Bucks are right up there with the Knicks and the Sixers as far as Boston Celtics challengers in the 2025 NBA season, and I'm going to explain every detail of why I believe that in this video. We're going to go through their entire offseason, every move the Milwaukee Bucks have made this offseason as far as draft, trades, and free agency, every move, and then we're also going to do a massive deep dive on their entire 2025 roster. And at the end of the video, I'm going to explain my take of why I think they are just as good as those other teams I mentioned. This is a Milwaukee Bucks deep dive, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. And just one more thing before you get into the deep dive, I am a Sixers fan. The Bucks terrify me. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm going to really try my best genuinely to give your team a fair shake. No hostility for this video. I promise you guys. I really mean that. With all that out of the way, let's get right into the Milwaukee Bucks deep dive for the upcoming 2025 season. Let's go, folks. So we're going to start with the Milwaukee Bucks offseason and every move they've made, and we're going to do it in three categories, which will be re-signings, additions, and departures. And then we'll move on to the draft, and then we'll do the roster deep dive. Now, as far as the re-signings, you actually didn't have any. I think you handled most of that stuff last offseason, signing Khris Middleton and re-signing Brook Lopez, both of them to a long-term deal. So not much news in the re-signings department. For the additions, you've made, I think, some significant ones on the margins. And this is a team I think has added a lot of depth in the offseason, starting with Taurean Prince, who was with the Lakers last season, had a prominent role with the Lakers, who were a playoff team. I mean, this is a good big wing for you guys that'll be able to come in, hit some threes, and play some defense. He can probably guard the 3 or the 4 pretty consistently. I like his shooting ability. Can add a little bit of edge and kind of basically just fill that Jay Crowder role, maybe hopefully consistently if you're hoping that. I think him and Jay Crowder are similar players, 3-and-D wings that are super big and can guard the 3 or the 4. I like the move, signing Taurean Prince. I really do. I think he's a good player. I think he's going to fit in to that Jay Crowder role at the backup power forward, wherever you want to play him, pretty well, I'd say. You also add some perimeter defense, and this is one of the things I think the Milwaukee Bucks struggled with last season quite a bit. You lose Jrue Holiday, you trade him, involved in that Damien Lillard trade, right? And that was a big loss as far as the perimeter defense. We'll get into all that stuff later, but I think, having a focal point on, perimeter defense in this offseason is going to be huge, and you end up adding Delon Wright, who was previously with the Miami Heat last season. Delon Wright is a talented perimeter defender. He is probably going to be your backup point guard, or definitely in the guard rotation for sure. This is a guy that shot okay with the Heat last season. One of his big, I guess, flaws as a player, Delon Wright, is his shooting ability, or has been throughout his career. But if he can hit somewhat of a consistent 3 ball, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. He just can't be a liability. If he can do that, he'll be able to get big minutes in this rotation because of that supreme defensive talent that he has to be able to lock up guards any given night, right? So I think that's a great move. Bolstering maybe the biggest weakness on this team last season, and adding a guy who can come in and lock up right away in Delon Wright. And probably the biggest addition in free agency was Gary Trent Jr. Now, Gary Trent Jr., this is a player that I thought had some interesting value on the market because, originally I thought, Gary Trent's going to get above an MLE contract, right? Like, he's a multi-year guy that I think could help a team in a lot of aspects, and primarily offensive shooting and perimeter spacing. And then, time went by in free agency. Nothing happens with Gary Trent Jr., from the Raptors. Offseason progresses a little bit, nothing happens, and then they're saying, oh, he's not even valued from a lot of these teams as an MLE player, and I'm like, whoa, okay, that's kind of a big change. And then all of a sudden, nobody signs him, right? So you end up getting Gary Trent Jr. on a cheap 1-year prove-it deal. This is an absolute W signing for the Bucks. Shoring up that 2-guard position, I think he will play really well off the ball. People have had, I guess, up and down or, mixed reactions to his defense. I think some people say he's a good defender, and some people say he's not a good defender, below average. I saw a report a few days ago that said Gary Trent Jr., there was a anonymous NBA executive that valued his defense below average, which was interesting to me. So we'll just have to see what kind of defender Gary Trent Jr. is going to be with the Bucks. But all that aside, I mean, this is a really good shooter. He can shoot on the move. He can shoot off the dribble. He can handle the ball a little bit. He can play on ball or off ball offensively. And I think he's going to add a lot of dynamic value to you guys offensively if you're a Bucks fan. He basically replaces the 2-guard position that you lost, which we're going to get into next. but I think you upgraded big time on the 2-guard with Gary Trent Jr. Give him a 1-year prove-it deal. If it doesn't work out, it's a 1-year deal. And if it does, if it works out the way, it possibly could, at the highest potential, this is a guy that can add a ton of value to your team. So, big time upgrade on the 2-guard in my opinion. And then for the departures, I'm actually on NBA.com and they're not even listing all the departures because some of those guys haven't signed with other teams, but Malik Beasley is the big one. He was your starting 2-guard last season. He was an elite floor spacer, really great shooter, good enough to be in the 3-point competition, right? This guy's a sniper. He ends up signing a deal with the Pistons and you replace him with Gary Trent Jr. And I actually think, like I said, Gary Trent Jr. is a more dynamic player than Malik Beasley, who was primarily a elite spot up shooter. I like Malik Beasley a lot, and I think he did add a lot to your team last season, but I think Gary Trent has more high upside as far as a impact player goes and a role player. I think he's able to do more things for your team. He might not be as great of a shooter as Malik Beasley, but I think he just adds some more dynamic ability. So, I think that is an upgrade. As some more departures, we have Patrick Beverly, who I believe is playing overseas at this point. And again, you kind of just replace that role with Delon Wright, which I think is an upgrade as well over Pat Bev. And then also Jay Crowder, hasn't signed with the team yet, but I would expect him not to return to the Bucks because you signed Taurean Prince. So, basically, I actually think all three of these additions are shoring up the role players that you're losing and actually upgrading all three of them. I think all three of these guys are upgrades over your last roles, and that is Taurean Prince to come in and be a 3-and-D guy as a big wing, fill in Jay Crowder's role and upgrade on it. Delon Wright as a rotation guard that can provide solid perimeter defense, upgrading on Pat Bev, and then Gary Trent Jr. upgrading on the offensive, 2-guard basically with some defensive, I guess, volatility in there, right? We'll have to see what kind of defender he is, but either way you slice it, I think, these additions are good for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now we'll get into the draft and then we'll do the roster deep dive. And, for the draft, you actually had a pretty good one in my opinion. And with the 23rd overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft, you end up selecting AJ Johnson, who is a guard out of California. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't know a whole ton about these prospects. I know a little bit more about your 2nd round pick, but make sure you guys let me know down in the comments section. I'm not going to, pretend I'm an expert on, these 2 draft prospects, but so if I get something wrong, please correct me in the comments. I welcome it. But as far as AJ Johnson, by all accounts, he is a player that, has really good size for a 2-guard, and I think is, more of a, I guess, 2-way versatile kind of, probably a 2-guard, right? From all accounts that I'm reading, I've read several, I guess, scouting reports on him, and basically it says, what he's supposed to be or could be, I guess, as a prospect is good size at 6'5" and great athleticism, and should translate to the next level with both of those things. He also has, I guess, flash some ability to create offensively and play make for others. I think primarily his best trait, as far as from what I can see, is his defensive potential. He has good length and I guess all the physical tools to be a good perimeter defender. So again, another addressing issue of the perimeter defense. I like this move. Maybe he's not quite ready to play yet, but if you can develop this guy, he could be a perimeter guy you look to defend moving forward. I think there is, I guess, a lot of encouraging stuff about that. The Bucks have really needed to shore up that perimeter defense, and this, this report is very good and reassuring. If you're a Bucks fan, I think AJ Johnson will fit in quite well. Whether or not he plays this season, I don't know that that's going to be a big thing. Doc Rivers, I know, especially me being a Sixers fan, having watched him a lot, doesn't love to play young players that are unproven. So when he's trying to compete, so I wouldn't expect him to get a ton of minutes this season, but maybe if everything works out, he could, right? So I like this draft pick at 23rd overall. It makes a lot of sense. And the 33rd overall pick, I know a little bit more about because I've looked into this player, and that is Tyler Smith. And I actually thought this was a draft steal, one of the biggest draft steals, because Tyler Smith from G League Ignite is a power forward with supreme athleticism. People say at the combine, he did really well and basically has a lot of athletic profile similar to John Collins of now the Utah Jazz, was with the Hawks for a long time. Great athlete from that power forward position. Tyler Smith also has shooting ability, and I think that's what could separate him from a lot of these other athletes at the power forward position. This is a guy I think has a ton of potential, and getting him at 33rd overall is a big win. Again, another guy I'm not sure is going to get a ton of minutes this season, but you have to like the ceiling and upside of a 2nd round pick that you just take a shot on. This was a guy that was projected to go in the 1st round by a lot of people. Again, I will reiterate, I don't think Doc Rivers likes to play young, unproven talent, but either way you slice it, these 2 guys are development pieces and potential projects that, maybe a couple years down the road end up developing into really good players. And I think Tyler Smith, I just love his skill set. He's a good dunker as well. Great athlete with a ton of upside at shooting as well. So I think you hit a home run on both these picks. You address a couple of needs, which is youth, athleticism, and perimeter defense. And I think you get good value for both selections where you took them. So round of applause for the Bucks draft. I think they nailed it. And now the moment everybody's been waiting for. This is my favorite part of the deep dives. I don't know about you guys, but we do a lot of deep dives on this channel. Hoping to cover every team by the end of the offseason, so make sure you guys subscribe. This is the Milwaukee Bucks 2025 roster deep dive, where I'm going to be, dissecting every player on this team, how they fit with the team and all that good stuff. I'm not going to be covering every player, every notable player, I guess, for me, I'm going to be talking about. So let's get into the Milwaukee Bucks 2025 roster deep dive in this video. Starting with the generational talent out of Greece, and maybe the best athlete I've ever seen in basketball, or just life period. They don't call him the freak for nothing. So unfortunate how injuries have really hampered his playoff success of the last few years, but we're gonna have to start with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Okay, Giannis doesn't necessarily get all of the love he deserves anymore. The narrative before the 2021 finals run was that he couldn't get it done in the playoffs. He can't shoot, he needs to add a jump shot or it's not gonna happen. He wins the 2021 finals, quite possibly having one of the greatest playoff runs of all time. Not quite possibly, he did. He had one of the greatest playoff runs ever in 2021, winning the finals. And again, maybe one of the best final series I've ever seen. It's got to be up there with like Jokic in 2023 and Kawhi in 2019 and some of those LeBron runs. It was legendary. Then for a short period after that, the narrative becomes Giannis is the best player in the world. A season or two goes by, and now all of a sudden, he's injury prone, he's old, and he's, the Bucks are an afterthought. This is ridiculous to me. Giannis has put together healthy seasons and unfortunately has just been really unlucky in the playoffs with injuries. I can relate to this as a Sixers fan, having gone through it with my best player in Embiid, and how crushing it must be for you Bucks fans when it happens. Nonetheless, Giannis was an MVP candidate last season, and if not for the Bucks stumbling towards the end of the season, I think Giannis would have been a finalist, no question about it, putting up some of his best numbers of his career and actually playing 73 games. A lot of people forget that because he was injured through the playoffs, but if Giannis was healthy in the playoffs, man, I don't know. I think the Bucks are easily a second round team. No offense to the Pacers, but it would have been a lot more interesting. I got to say that in that Pacers series, and even without Giannis, he did pretty well. But Giannis again having one of the best statistical production seasons of his career. Leading the Bucks to a 3rd seed in the East, and just performing at an all-time great level last season, making All NBA first team. Still the maybe the best two-way player in the entire world. Probably is, honestly. Nothing's changed with Giannis. Nothing. If anything, he's gotten more polished and more consistent as time has gone on. He's just been injured in the playoffs, which is again so unfortunate, and I feel for you Bucks fans. Last year there was a lot of moving pieces with the season. Things didn't quite work out on someone else we're going to talk about as maybe as best you'd like. I know that's been the narrative, that it was so disappointing and Doc Rivers blah blah blah. I'm not going to hammer that home in this video. That's not really what we're here to talk about. I'm here to deep dive on their 2025 season, but listen, don't lose faith in Giannis. I certainly wouldn't. He terrifies me. He terrifies probably every Eastern Conference fan of a contender. I know the Knicks have, Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby to defend a guy like Giannis. I know the Celtics have Tatum, Brown, White, all that good stuff, but you just can't account for his skills. You just can't. He's just gonna make those plays in transition every single game, no matter who you put on him, no matter what strategy you have. He's just an all-time great player, and I think he will be as great as he was, throughout his career next season. No question about it. We really are knocking on wood, even me being a Sixers fan, knocking on wood for Giannis to have a healthy, full strength season and full strength playoffs as well. I don't want to beat teams half strength. I don't want to beat teams without their best player. I hope Giannis goes into the playoffs with full strength so he can compete against the best. And he hasn't had that opportunity in the past couple of years, and it's unfortunate. Make no mistake, Giannis will be an MVP candidate next season, and he will be an MVP candidate the season after that. He is that great, and he is still that great. And I don't know why the narrative has switched a little bit on him. He's a top 3 player in the world, no question. In my opinion, the second best player in the world, whatever that's worth, right? My opinion. But the second best player in your team is Damien Lillard. I think that's very safe to say. We could talk all day about how, maybe the fit with him and Giannis wasn't seamless as people thought. We could talk all about how he took a dip in production. We could talk about how he's getting older, and at times throughout the season, maybe he didn't look so happy at being in Milwaukee. We could talk about that. I'm not gonna, because I actually think this is one of the most unpredictable things going into the 2025 season, and if I had to put a guess on it, I'd say it's going to work out for the better between Dame in Milwaukee and Giannis. I think them having a year under their belt together, and now having, finally a coach that's going to be with them hopefully all season next year, to where you don't have to, get a coach midway through the season again and learn how to, be a team halfway through the season. Hopefully the continuity can build between this team, and Damian Lillard can, I guess, adapt a little bit, be having that experience with the Bucks under his belt a little bit more, not just with Giannis, but all the other players on the team. And one of the things I think, like I said is not being talked about enough is what if they come out next season like we expected them to at the beginning of last season? What if they come out, Dame and Giannis, put on a show that we all expected next season? I think that is kind of likely. I think not only is it likely, I actually think, it's going to be closer to that than what we saw last season. I think they're going to be much improved chemistry-wise with Damien Lillard. Make no mistake about it, Dame is still a top elite point guard in this league. He is still a top elite offensive player of all time, even at his age. Doesn't matter how old he is. Even if you just look at his playoff numbers last year, I know they lost in 6 games, but I know he only played 4 of them. But listen, man, fighting through injuries, still averaging 31 points a game, 5 assists on, 42% from the field on 12 attempts per game, and 97% from the line on 10 attempts per game. I mean, I don't think Dame has lost his touch. That's not what I see. I see a new situation for him that he's never experienced, going to a different team. A lot of having to adapt to adversity last season throughout this entire roster with a new coach, with, people moving in and out of the lineup, stuff like that. I think the Dame and Giannis tandem is going to be what we thought it was going to be at the start of last season in next season. In other words, this is going to be, in my opinion, the surprise of the Eastern Conference. I think the Bucks come out in peak form next season and just shock the world. Nobody's talking about the Bucks. They're all talking about the Sixers, the Knicks, and the Celtics. And what if they do look like that next season? I actually think it's more likely. So anyway, I've been saying the same thing for 5 minutes and I apologize, but that is what I think. That is part of my assessment of this team, and I think it's the biggest one people have to consider. People just write this team off like, oh, it didn't work out last year, they're done. Like, are you crazy? We haven't even talked about Khris Middleton yet, who actually looks like the Khris Middleton of a couple years ago when they made those big playoff runs. He had the injury. Now he comes back last season and he showed out in the playoffs. He played so incredibly well in a, bigger role without Giannis. And another thing people aren't talking about, Khris Middleton. People think about the Bucks. They think about Dame, Giannis, Doc Rivers, Brook Lopez, all that good stuff. You lost Jrue Holiday. Nobody talked about Khris Middleton and how basically he's back. He's back. If he plays like he did in the playoffs last season, I know Khris Middleton has had, since the injury, a major dip in production and games played, right? He's struggled to stay healthy. I think the knee injury clearly affected him for a couple years now, but, only playing 55 games last season, and obviously his numbers have went down, but in the playoffs last year, he looked like he found his rhythm towards the end of the season, and he played all 6 games in the playoffs. He averaged 25 points a game, with all the attention being on him for, most of it, and Dame, so no Giannis to take all the attention. He averaged 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists on 48% from the field, 36 from 3 on 5 attempts, and 90% from the line on 5 free throws per game. Those are elite numbers. Those are elite playoff numbers. If you could get that out of Khris Middleton with lowered volume with Giannis back in the lineup, if he can just sustain a healthy season when he plays like that, I don't know how you don't rank this team in the top 3 in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I know there's going to be some great teams next year in the East, but Middleton is the wild card. The wild cards for this team are Khris Middleton. What kind of Khris Middleton we get? I think it's more like the last year playoff version in 2025, and then also the Dame and Giannis tandem, which again I think will be much improved. So this is a 55 win team next season, no question, and that is good enough to be a 3rd in the East. And we haven't even gotten through most of this roster yet. Okay, those are 3 players right there. Brook Lopez having a little bit of a interesting season last year, played kind of a different role under Doc Rivers a little bit, focused more on offense, which I think again without Giannis being in the lineup, he kind of had to do. I think Brook Lopez bounces back next year. I know he's old. I don't care. Brook Lopez is a top 10 center in the league and is super underrated when he's 36 years old. But, anytime you have a defensive anchor like Brook Lopez, I don't care how slow or old he is, who can hit the 3 from deep. This is a underrated center shooter that has such a high release that can get a shot off from almost anywhere without getting contested, as much as you think. You could be right up on him. He could get that 3. He's got a release kind of over his head, and his volume is big from 3 too. I mean, during the regular season last year, he's also very consistent, healthy last couple years. 37% from 3 on 5 attempts per game as a center is elite. Again, this is a DPOY candidate every time he's on the floor. And Brook Lopez, I don't think has lost a step. I think he just kind of had to adapt to a lot of the situations last year that the different coaches put him in. And I think you see the 2021, 2022, 23 version of Brook Lopez next year. If he plays like he did in 2023, I mean, we got a DPOY top elite tier role player, next season who just fits this team and complements Giannis so well. So, expect Brook Lopez. The front office has come out and said they're not interested in trading Brook Lopez. That was a rumor. You heard a lot about the Lakers, how they were going to trade for Brook Lopez. GM says we're not trading Brook Lopez. So, expect him to be in peak form next season. They clearly feel confident about Brook Lopez. So I think we should too. Bobby Portis is, I think a fan favorite in Milwaukee. Every time I watch a Bucks game, the fans go crazy. They do Bobby chants. Bobby rules, by the way. Love his intensity. That dude is a competitor and a dog. I would love him if I was a Bucks fan. Let me know down in the comments section how much you love Bobby if you're a Bucks fan. Bobby's the man, okay? And not only that, he is such a big performer. He in big games always hits big shots. He's always ready to shoot the ball. He's a great three-point shooter and a floor spacer, great mid-range shooter, good offensive player, man. And he bodies up defensively as well. I mean, this is a guy that wants to win bad, and he has a great skill set. Again, this guy comes off the bench, one of the best six men in the league. He can spot start for the center if Brook Lopez is down. He can spot for the power forward if Giannis goes down. And I think adding Taurean Prince is going to help, Bobby's role even more. He's a great rebounder. He is a competitor, and I think he's just a great two-way player that offensively has a lot more bag than a lot of people think and a lot more bag than the stats will show. He's got a bag. He can score in the post, from those fadeaway mid-range. He's lethal from the mid-range. You cannot leave him open mid-range. I just love Bobby Portis. I love his game. Bucks fans, let me know how much you love Bobby as well. So basically that's your starting five. We talked about the big additions: Taurean Prince, Delon Wright, and Gary Trent Jr. Those guys, could slide into the starting lineup. So I think Gary Trent Jr. will start at the two guard. I think the lineup will look something like Dame, Gary Trent, Khris Middleton, Giannis, and then Brook Lopez. And then off the bench, you'll have like Delon Wright, Pat Connaughton, who we'll talk about in a little bit, Taurean Prince, Bobby Portis, and someone else. So that's a great rotation. That is a 9-man rotation that, again, is 55 win team. And I think the regular season is going to be big for the Bucks next year because of the chemistry issues they showed at times last season and the new coach, right? They're gonna have to work through a lot of mistakes through the regular season, but most of the great players on this team, actually all of them, are veterans. So this is a situation where these are guys that have experienced winning at a high level before. Most of them, talk about Giannis, Bobby, and Brook Lopez all being champions, as well as Khris Middleton. So this shouldn't be too much of an issue, assuming everything goes right health wise. But off the bench, you do have other guys that are intriguing. I mean, Andre Jackson Jr., I think, had a good year last year for a rookie. This guy's a good role player. He actually ended up playing a lot more than I thought he would, because again, I've watched Doc Rivers closely as a Sixers fan for his time here, and just throughout his history, doesn't like to play a lot of young players. Andre Jackson ended up having a big role last season. Ended up playing 57 games, 10 minutes a game. I think his role increased a little bit, and he can shoot. I think he's just a good off-ball connector. I would imagine his role will increase a lot next season off the bench, and I just like his polish as a young player. I think that's something worth noting. That's the type of young player Doc Rivers will lean towards. He doesn't like uncertainty. He likes consistent guys that are polished. So if you're young and you're like that, I think you get a big role. AJ Green as well. I mean, I like the polish of him as well. I mean, AJ Green last year was his second year, and him alongside Jackson, I think, have had interesting roles last year, and I think could uptick as the season progresses. I think those guys will improve, as well as some of the rookies. We'll have to see if they get any playing time. It appears to me that both of these rookies are a little bit raw, so I think that could factor into whether or not they get minutes next season, or I guess valuable minutes, right, in a rotation. You do have a lot of great veterans, as I mentioned, 9 of them particularly, so 9 of them expected to get good minutes. And Doc Rivers, again, leans towards shorter rotations with guys he trusts and relies on. It doesn't like to shake things up a lot with the rotation. So I think 9 or 10 is what you'll get in the regular season. Throughout, maybe you'll factor in some rookies if things are unaccounted for. There's gonna be injuries. Clearly, this is an older team, so maybe somebody steps up through those injuries and earns a bigger role. But for now, I think as far as the playoffs goes, you'll have a 9-man or 8-man rotation, and you got to feel pretty good about who those 8 guys are. So Pat Connaughton, another just solid quality role player, can defend pretty well. He's a good athlete and shoots the ball pretty well off the catch. Another guy that could be in line for minutes. This is going to be a good battle in terms of the guards and the wings. I think you still could probably use another point guard on the roster that, let's say a Damien Lillard injury happens, knock on wood, nothing happens injury wise with this team, but let's say Delon Wright, can't hit a 3 for stretches of the season. I think just another floor general could come in, a veteran guy, could help this team a little bit, just for that, I guess, depth. But Marion Beauchamp, another guy that I like as a shooter. He is a knockdown shooter. That is his thing. And, he's kind of a wing, but I think, could provide significant shooting throughout stretches of the season. There's like 8 or 9 guys that I think will 100% get good minutes. And then I think like the rest is up for debate. And even those 9, I think like players like Delon Wright, like Taurean Prince could find their way. Like if they struggle to shoot for stretches of the season, could find their, minutes decreasing and young guys stepping up like Andre Jackson Jr. and some of these rookies and AJ Green as well. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the roster deep dive. That's pretty much it. As far as Doc Rivers, we'll address him real quick. I know he's had failures. I know he's had plenty of them. I've seen them as a Sixers fan, time and time again. I know what his limitations are. I'm sure you guys do too. At the end of the day, Doc Rivers, I think, is a coach. I think I could sum it up well. I think he's a good coach, right? I think he has some obvious flaws, and they're kind of big ones. I think the inability to adapt on the fly is one of them. I think, maintaining momentum late in series is another one. But I will say this, okay? Doc Rivers has a high floor as far as a coach. His floor is very high. His ceiling might not be as high as some of the other coaches on the market or, coaches in the league, some of the top elite ones, right? But his floor is high. You're going to make the playoffs next year, barring injury. You're going to be a top seed in the playoffs next year, barring injury, and you're going to basically get the most out of your stars, most likely, barring injury, okay? Doc Rivers does very well with star players. He's a good motivator, and hopefully everyone can stay healthy on this team. And I think this is a better team than Doc had in Philadelphia. Maybe the 2023 year was, kind of on par with the James Harden and Embiid. That team was okay, but this team is just it's stacked. It's loaded with talent, and I know there are concerns, right? Doc Rivers is one of them. The way he's handled things since he's been in Milwaukee is, I'm sure Milwaukee fans are a little bit worried. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you guys can let me know down in the comment section. But to say that this team, realistically couldn't make a finals run in 2025 is mind-blowing to me. There's just, there's so many things that could go right for this team, and I think there's enough of them to where some of them will, and one of them being Damien Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think having a year under their belt, having a new, basically, continuity with Coach Rivers is going to do wonders for them, and I think Dame and Giannis are going to come out like they were supposed to in 2024. People say, Dame had a terrible year. He didn't have a terrible year. That's ridiculous. He had a slightly less good year for Damian Lillard standards, which is still great all-star level. He did not have a bad year by any means. This is an all-time great talent who's still a top-tier talent in the league and still can provide some of the best dynamic offensive ability of anybody in the league. Guard, forward, center, doesn't matter. He is that great. Giannis is the same way, just different skill set. We've already talked about it, but I have faith in these all-time great players to be able to work this out. And I have faith in the rest of the roster as, winning veterans, proven winning veterans, to figure out their roles as well. And I do, again, Doc Rivers isn't the perfect coach, but I do have faith in him to raise the floor of this team. This team will win 50 games. This team will, potentially win 55 games and be a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. That's my prediction. I just don't think enough people are talking about the Bucks. Bucks fans can let me know down in the comment section what you feel about that. It could be a good thing. A lot of times the media scrutiny and the microscope can really end up, hurting teams rather than helping them. I know the fans could be frustrated with the lack of attention, but I think for the team and, their future in general, I think it's a good thing to not have all eyes on you, like the Knicks and the Celtics have. So listen, Milwaukee fans, I'm a Sixers fan. We're definitely going to be both towards the top of the conference, I would imagine, barring health, next season in 2025. No hostility. I want every team in this league to play their best next season, including my Sixers, including the Bucks, including the Celtics. I want to beat teams at their best. I want my team to be the best of all of them, but no hostility, man. You guys are a great fan base. You're passionate. I watch Bucks games all the time, and I actually, really am quite fond of the fan base. Yeah, one of my favorite things about the Bucks fans is the Bobby Portis chants. Bobby. That's my favorite. I love Bobby Portis too. So again, I'm, a lot of the, I guess, heatedness and kind of not being so friendliness, if you want to call it, I'm trying to be nice here, of the Sixers fan base, I can tell you is from jealousy. We're jealous of teams like the Celtics. We're jealous of the Bucks, and we're scared, quite frankly. We just haven't historically, throughout my lifetime been on that level. So, when we see teams like you guys, it's not that we hate you or like actually hate your players. And maybe some, pockets of the Philly fan base, the more toxic types. But for me and people like me, which I think there are a lot of them in the Philly fan base, we just want to see our team do their best. And it's just so frustrating that we haven't been able to. I think we take it out on a lot of other fan bases sometimes. And no hostility, man. Hopefully you guys have a great season. I want to beat you guys at your best, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way about us. Either way, if you're a Bucks fan, let me know down in the comment section if you agree with my take. Do you think that this team is a 55-win team? Do you think that they have what it takes to make a finals run like they did in 2021? Do you think that Dame and Giannis will figure it out? Do you think that Doc Rivers is a disaster? Let me know all of your thoughts. Again, I say this at the end of every deep dive. And by the way, we're going to be doing, a full week of deep dives on this channel. It's Sunday right now at the time you're recording this. So from Sunday all the way to next Sunday, basically, we're going to be doing every day. We'll do a deep dive on a different team. I'm trying to cover all 30 by the end of the offseason. But, if you're a Bucks fan, I say this at the end of every deep dive, there's just going to be things about your team that I don't know as an outsider, right? I don't follow the Bucks with a microscope like I would my Sixers. So, the hearing from the individual fan base is the best thing I can do to learn as a creator and learn about other teams. Again, I'm rooting for every team. If my Sixers play them, I'm rooting for the Sixers. But I want every team to play their best. Clearly, it's no fun to beat teams at half strength. That's not what competition is about. So best of luck, Bucks, next season. And again, fan base, let me know down in the comments. Please share all of those little, microscopic insights that I might miss as an outsider. I'm trying to do your team justice, but I'm just gonna miss some of those things. So if I got anything wrong, please correct me. I love hearing, my mistakes, correcting my mistakes for future videos. I'm not someone that handles criticism and gets defensive or anything. Like I make mistakes. This is a long recording. I'm at 44 minutes in this recording. I'm gonna make some mistakes, so please, just for the sake of the video, for other people, down in the comments, I don't want to spread misinformation, so please let me know, Bucks fans. Other than that, again, subscribe to the channel. We're gonna be doing deep dives every day on the channel coming up here for every team. We'll probably be covering your favorite team at some point if you're not a Bucks fan within the next couple weeks. I'm trying to do every team by the end of the offseason. We've already covered, I think, 11, and this will be the 12th. So yeah, plenty more to come. And after the deep dives are over, we're going every day. We upload content just like this every day on the channel. That's what you're getting if you subscribe. I would love to have you, be honored to have you. You guys been great with the support. Thank you for all the support if you already are subscribed. If you're not, I want you to be in on this journey, man. We're trying to grow every day. I work really hard on this channel, so I just love basketball and I love talking about it. And I guess a couple people like listening because you guys have been really great with the support. So thank you. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day today, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you really did, the best thing you can do to help me as a creator is leave a comment on your feedback. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. That really helps new people find it. So if you want this channel to grow like I do, as much as I do, please leave a like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff helps tremendously. Even if it's just one person, I'm telling you, it helps tremendously. So please do that if you can. And other than that, man, just stay tuned for the channel. Make sure you have notifications turned on because, again, uploads every day, and it'll most likely, it's going to be a deep dive every day this week. So I'm excited, man. Deep dive season. Let's get it, folks. I will catch you in the next one. Hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day today. Bucks fans, much love, much respect. Nothing, hostile. At least not yet. Maybe if we play each other in the playoffs, it can get a little toxic. I don't know, man. I try not to be toxic on the channel. I want to create a positive place for people to go every day. As far as the NBA community, there's a lot of toxicity in the NBA community. I don't want to take part in that, as much as I can, but, I'm human. I make mistakes. I get a little toxic, but hopefully you guys have it. I'll see you guys tomorrow in the video. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day today. Bucks fans, let me know how I did on your team, and new deep dive tomorrow. I'll catch you later. This is your boy D Haven, as always. Peace.